Os, I'm Sensei Michael from the Global Martial Arts University here with Sensei John.
Os.
We're here actually to answer common questions from Shotokan beginners. I'm going to be going down a list of some questions that we most commonly get asked by students and give you a little bit more information. So the first one is a uniform required for training?
I'll answer that in a couple of different ways. One, if you're in a physical dojo training, yes, nearly all dojos require a uniform. In Shotokan, the uniform is a white uniform with your appropriate belt color. In the Global Martial Arts University, we would like to see you wearing a uniform if you can. We understand that people are in a distance training system like this, and financial situations at times, people can't get a uniform right off. But we encourage you to get, a traditional uniform.
We don't force you to wear one because, like Sensei John said, not everyone has the means to. Sometimes it's hard to get one ordered in. We have students in random countries all around the world that can't always order a martial arts uniform easily. But yeah, that's just I think when you're training publicly, especially in a group environment in the dojo, It's something that you're definitely going to always have to wear. If you're working out at home, it's okay to be comfortable in something, just exercise clothes, etc. At some point, that would be nice to have that formal uniform if you can get it. But it's not something that should hold you back from even learning the martial art, is essentially how we see it. All right, so the next one, how should students formally address you and other instructors and the Shotokan program specifically?
The way that I'm addressed is Sensei John, in my school, in a school setting. A student comes in, he'll call me Sensei John. That's very typical throughout dojos, regardless of your ranking or your classification in a way. In Japanese, I'm a Shihan, at a Shihan level. So at a belt test, I would be referred to as Shihan Hodge. That's in a more formal, at a belt test, that's a much more formal setting. But normally in school, when we're just practicing, or you're corresponding with me, it would be Sensei John is adequate.
Makes sense. And people ask me the same thing, like in the Ultimate Bojutsu program, and they're like, why don't you go by Hodge Sensei? Because it's typical to have the last name and then Sensei in Japanese. And in a way, we've made it more comfortable for English speakers.
Right.
It's just the way that I've always been addressed was Sensei Michael. It's just a comfortable. There's a great level of respect for someone who's a sensei, first of all, because as you see in Japan, teachers overall are revered and respected much more so than I think we see in some Western nations, because they have great respect for anyone that teaches someone else. And so calling someone sensei already is incredible. But beyond that, rather than being so formal and distant, I think, by using our last names, I've always liked having the first name because you can have a little bit more of a personal connection and rapport with your student. And I think that's probably why Sensei John would go by that too.
That's right.
Okay. How many times a week should I train?
Most students need, at a minimum, probably a couple of training sessions a week. And those sessions are really going to depend on the level you're at and your physical abilities, where you're at physically.
Right.
In the beginning, we want to start off slow and build up. So a beginner may be training 2 to 3 times a week with 30 to 45 minute training sessions. And then as you go up in rank, the amount of material that you're working with all the time is becoming more and more, and you're also having to go back and train on all the material you've previously learned.
And you're probably trying to push your limits a little more anyway. Physically.
And you're trying to push your limit. So then you start getting up into an hour and a half. And when you get up into your higher levels, in your advanced levels, you're probably going to be training, 3 to 5 days a week. And what I did anyway, when I was going through the ranks, is I had like 3 days a week that were like 2 hours because I was looking at my kata and everything that I had going on. And then I had some other workouts that were like, an hour or an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So the voluminous of the material, creates more and more as you move up.
Absolutely. And I would also just a little recommendation, don't overwhelm yourself at the beginning and then burn out.
Absolutely.
A lot of a lot of students are very gung-ho about the training, and they're like, oh, I'm going to do this, and they start training like 5 days a week, and then they burn out. So do something that is sustainable, something that actually works in your family's schedule. A nice thing about learning at home, though, is you can vary that. It's not always a set schedule, but you need some sort of consistency, though. Because if you go a week or 2 weeks without doing anything, and then you try to cram in 3 or 4, it's not going to be as well. You need something that's fairly smooth 2-3 times a week, I think.
Yeah, and it's always your body. You really have to listen to your body. We want to push ourselves a little bit all the time. But if you, like Sensei Michael says, if you overwork yourself, what happens is you start having injuries.
Yeah.
And you get upset. And it's really hard to recover from that. So watch your body, do what you can, have a nice consistent workout schedule.
That's right. Okay, so what are the most important things to concentrate on when you begin training? And that question probably means beyond just the regular material. Obviously, we know we need to learn these techniques and, do these classes, but it's other than that.
Some of the things that students don't really focus on that they need to kind of hone in on is like your breathing. It's not apparent when you first start training how important breathing is. Like to breathe in on the preparation and exhale on the execution and continue that breathing. But you ask an advanced student and he'll go, yeah, you need to be breathing, because you have to keep your energy level. You're wanting to keep your energy level up, and you want to keep keep yourself, it helps you stay motivated, it helps you stay focused. Even your breathing helps you focus as you go through your techniques and your exercises. So that would be one. The next is you need to really work on your stances. A beginner student really needs to hone in on making sure that their stances are correct, that I have the right separation, length and width wise, and that I stay consistent in my stances. What I see a lot of times, and I know you do too, Sensei Michael, is we'll see somebody going through Kihon drills or doing kata, and their stances are just all over the place. Mm-hmm. And what that does is that breaks down the integrity of your technique. When you're trying to throw an oizuki or a block or whatever, a bad stance just wrecks the foundation of that technique. So watch your stances. So we have breathing, we have stances, posture. Make sure that you're upright all the time. A lot of beginners don't focus on that, and they lean too far forward or they lean too far back. And you want to have your body centered right straight through the center of your stance as you do your techniques. So we have breathing, stances, posture, and targeting. One of the things is I have a target out in front of me, a virtual target, let's say, and I want to punch to that virtual target each time. If I'm doing Chudan, that's solar plexus level. If I'm doing Jodan, that's nose level. Geidan is lower abdomen and or lower. But so we need to be aware of where our targeting is at. I see people doing tests or practicing, and they're punching all over the place as they move through their katas or their Kihon drills.
You've got to actually have the imaginary opponent at the beginning. We're talking about what should you focus on in the beginning. And if you don't do that in the beginning, you're just going to start throwing random attacks. Every time you learn it, you're not going to be actually trying to hit the same striking point. You're just going to throw it out there in front of you. I was going to say, on the point of stances, I think it's the equivalent of you getting into bodybuilding or going to the gym for mirror muscles. They're just trying to, strengthen the biceps, the triceps, the chest, for example. You're working on what you physically see, the arm blocks and strikes and kicks, you're totally forgetting about the base foundation, which is the total integrity of the strike. Just like sort of kind of glossing over or forgetting working squats and deadlifts and things that literally build up the main strength in your whole body, actually. It's the same thing in martial arts. Yeah, you've got to have that stance there for everything else to really work out well for you.
Right.
So.
And that fundamental level, that's really important.
Right.
You're trying to build that foundation, which is that stance, plus that targeting. Later on, you'll get to where you're moving those targets around. But in that first level, you need to really focus where you're at. And last thing I'll talk about is focus. Focus and concentration. When you first start, you're going to have difficulty focusing and concentrating because your mind is so busy with, how do I do this? You know, how does this work? So you have to break everything down. You have to go slow. You know, you have to do each technique slowly. Make sure it's correct, and then build your speed on top of that to where there's no thought. And that takes a lot of repetition and time. So think about having focus and concentration. To get that good focus and concentration, it's going to take a lot of repetition. So don't get upset with yourself because you don't seem to be, you know, making headway, but you are. You know, in the initial level, that's the toughest thing. Is I want to make headway real fast.
Exactly.
But I need to get this thing honed out before I go.
Well, that leads us in a way to our next question. What should you not be focused on? So what should you not be so worried about as a new student? Time
is the biggest illusion and killer. And it's not just Shotokan karate. It's anything in life. We have a fixation or obsession with time in our systems. And we give you a minimum time to go from point A to point B. And we give you that minimum time just because everybody demands it. I mean, we want to give you a target, but society demands that I have to know how long it's going to go from here to here to get there. Instead of thinking that way, what I encourage you to do is to only look at where you are and what you're doing. You know, don't fixate yourself on the time. And that's really what drives people out of programs, not just our program, any program, is they have some constriction upon themselves about how rapidly I need to do this or how I need to be. You know, how I need to be.
Their expectations are so tied to time.
So tied to time.
I'm not at this level yet and it's already been a month. Why? I must be wasting my time. I must be wasting my energy here. Those sort of things go in and out of their head all the time. You know, so. And
some other things that really are a drawback to you is to believe, you know, you watch Bruce Lee on films, Chuck Norris, all these guys who are fantastic martial artists. And, you know, we build some expectations of how something is supposed to be. Considering movies.
Yeah.
And this really happens. I mean, I did when I was a kid. I mean, I watched every Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris movie that was available. But when you get into the real thing, it's the real training. It takes time and it takes work, focus, concentration, determination, and never giving up. The only reason we're sitting here doing what we're doing is because of focus and determination. Like we never turned away. And so that's what we're telling you. Forget about the time. I hear that more than, I bet that is probably one of the top things. How long is it going to take me?
Yeah.
You know?
It's the wrong focus.
It's the wrong focus, yeah.
It should be about, hey, this is what I want. I want to get to a place where my body's stronger, I'm more focused, I have a better quality of life, I'm able to protect myself and serve my family better, etc. Whatever your goals are, something positive though. And then what do I need to do with the Shotokan program to get me there? And it's not going to involve, you have to train 30 hours and then get your belt. It's not going to be about time. It's going to be about the actions you're actually taking. Your attention and your intention are the words I always think about. You've got to pay attention to the right things and intend them for the right reasons, and then it will work out really well for you. You'll obviously go through and end up and earn that black belt probably too, but not because that was the only driving force behind you. It's having the right intention and the right motivations that actually end up getting you those things anyway, in a way. But that wasn't all you're thinking about along the ways. So I'll ask we have one more quick question. Is it okay to learn multiple martial arts styles or weapons at the same time? And like, how would you gauge that? Or is it kind of a bad idea to, for example, people ask, should I do Shotokan karate and ultimate bow, which is my bojutsu program, at the same time? Or learn Krav Maga and Shotokan or whatever. Maybe they're already learning an art and they want to learn a new one. What do you think about that?
Well, I think for a beginner really needs to get their foot on the ground with like Shotokan or whatever your hard style is that you're working in. Get 2 or 3 belt levels in and get comfortable with the stances and the training routines. And then you can bring in a weapon at that point or another style. I'd kind of be careful about mixing styles though, because techniques are similar in a lot of styles,
right,
but not completely.
I say, for example, ultimate bow can be complementary with Shotokan because it's a Japanese-based art and we use very similar stances, very similar methodologies. But if you're a pure beginner learning Shotokan and a few months later you wanted to start Krav, for example, they're very different styles.
Very
totally
different
different.
styles.
So I would definitely wait till you're a lot more advanced and you have a really good, comfortable foundation in one before you jump to a totally different type of style. Now, the only exception would be if you could learn Shotokan and, let's say, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu probably at the same time, because they're totally different in the fact
so
that you're
different, yes.
grappling, you're on the ground. But if you're comparing 2 stand-up styles, for example, Shotokan and Taekwondo or Kung Fu or something like that, you could clash more and start barring and using one or another as a crutch and not ending up learning one or the other properly.
So yeah, really what I did is I went through the ranks and got my black belt, and then I started training in other styles, and I started training in other weapons and other styles. And a lot of black belts do this, and we have a lot of black belts training with us,
right,
that have a black belt in something else and they want to get it in Shotokan. So that's really the best way to do that, and it's just easier to move through everything and really retain it. Mm-hmm. Retention is really hard when you're trying to master 2 things like that. They're very complicated.
That's right. Yeah, well, thank you, Sensei John, for answering questions. And if y'all have any other questions or comments, let us know. Hope you have a wonderful day. Keep training hard.